I didn't realize a $1,080 house would cost me my place in the family. But I wasn't just buying a house. I was rebuilding something my mother left behind. Just for me. The shouting still echoes in my mind. My sister's voice was sharp, loud, and full of disgust as she stood in my face, yelling about how I had betrayed the family. My father didn't say much at first, but the look he gave me, like I was a stranger who had done something shameful, hit me harder than any word ever could. Then he finally spoke. "You've embarrassed us. You shamed this family for a junk house? While your brother needed help." I stood there, silent, holding the envelope with the house papers in my hand, wondering how a decision I made for myself turned me into their enemy. They didn't ask why I bought it. They didn't care what it meant to me. All they saw was that I had refused to give my savings for my brother's luxury retreat and spent it instead on something they called garbage property. My sister laughed when she saw the photos of the house. "Is this where you plan to rot?" she mocked. My father didn't stop her. He just walked away and said over his shoulder, "Don't bother coming to your nephew's birthday. You're no longer part of this household." I went home that night with my ears burning and my heart sinking. I sat in silence, staring at the old house photo again, holding back tears. I wasn't just buying it for space or for investment. No, this house held something deeper, something no one else in the family knew. Something I didn't even fully understand yet. It all really started at that family dinner 2 weeks before I bought the house. My brother, Darren, had just come back from some self-improvement seminar and now wanted to go on a 2-week luxury retreat, to find himself in Arizona. The retreat cost thousands, and somehow, without even blinking, everyone at the table agreed that I should pay for it. "I mean, come on," my sister Janice said, swirling her wine. "You're not married, you don't have kids, and you live alone. You don't even do anything with your money." I remember gripping my fork a little tighter and saying, "I've been saving. That money is for something I've been planning." Dad raised an eyebrow at me and asked, "What plan could you possibly have that's more important than your brother's growth?" Darren sat back, arms folded, with that smug look on his face like he knew this whole conversation would end with me handing over my account number. I tried to explain gently that I wasn't comfortable spending my savings on a retreat that didn't concern me. "I've got my own things to manage. My car needs work, my job isn't stable, and honestly, I've been looking at a property. Something small." The table went silent for a second, and then Janice let out a loud laugh. "You buying a house? We're in a dumpster." I felt my face burn with embarrassment, but I stayed calm. "It's not much, but it's something I've been thinking about for a while. Just a little place out of town." Dad scoffed. "You've always been the disappointment. You get in the way when people need you. And now you're throwing your money away like this? On a shack while your brother's trying to improve his life." Darren nodded like some guru. "This retreat is life-changing. It's about mental strength, family energy, breaking generational trauma." "Then maybe you should fund it yourself," I snapped before I could stop myself. Everything went quiet again. Janice's smirk disappeared. Dad's expression turned cold and he slowly stood up from his seat. "You know what," he said, "you've shamed this family with your choices again and again. You never settled down. Never gave us a reason to be proud. And now, when your own brother needs help, you choose to be selfish." Selfish. That word hit me like a slap. After all the times I'd watched their kids when they were sick, lent Janice money she never paid back, stayed home from vacations so they could use my car. Now I was selfish because I wanted to spend my own money on something that mattered to me. I looked around the table and realized I was alone, even in a room full of people I shared blood with. Nobody stood up for me. Nobody said, "She's allowed to have her own life." I excused myself quietly, took my coat and left the house without another word. No one followed. No one called the next day. It was in that silence that I made up my mind. If they thought I was selfish for choosing myself, then maybe it was time I finally did just that. I didn't tell anyone when I made the purchase. I found the listing late one night while scrolling through my phone in bed. A small rundown house in a quiet town 2 hours away. It was listed for just $1,080. That number felt like a sign. It wasn't much, but it was enough to be mine. A place where I could breathe. A place no one else would control. The photos were rough. Broken windows, rotting floorboards, peeling paint. But there was something in that old frame that pulled at me. Something that whispered, "Start here." So I did. I used the last of my savings and paid in full. The process was quick. No one else was bidding. When the papers came in the mail, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. But peace doesn't last long when your family thinks you owe them everything. My sister found out first. I had taken a photo of the front door with the keys in my hand and posted it quietly on my private page. She must have seen it through someone else because the next thing I knew my phone was blowing up. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she texted. "You seriously spent money on that? You couldn't help your brother, but you bought a trash shack." Then came my father. He didn't even call. He just sent one long, cold message. "You have officially embarrassed this family. Don't show your face at the house again." They kicked me out of the family group chat. Stopped tagging me in photos. No one invited me to Darren's send-off party. When my birthday came around, it passed in silence. Not even a text. I sat alone in that broken little house, the floor creaking beneath me, the wind slipping through cracks in the glass. There was no furniture. No warmth. Just me and my bag and the sounds of a place abandoned for years. And that's when it hit me. Love in my family had always been conditional. As long as I stayed useful, quiet, and willing to give, they accepted me. But the second I chose myself, I was nothing to them. I curled up on an old blanket I had brought from home and listened to the hollow wind move through the broken windows. My chest ached in a way I didn't know was possible. How could love be this conditional? How could the people who raised me shut me out so easily, over something that was never theirs to control? But even through the ache, I held on to one small truth. They didn't know everything. This house wasn't just some random purchase. I didn't tell them why I really chose it. Not yet. The third morning I woke up in that dusty house, I decided to start cleaning out the back room. It had a door that stuck so bad I had to throw my whole weight against it just to get inside. The moment it creaked open, the smell of old wood, dust, and something faintly sweet filled the air. Light spilled through a cracked window, landing on two water-stained cardboard boxes pushed into the far corner. They looked like they'd been there for decades. I dragged them into the center of the room, coughing as the dust rose into the air. One of the boxes had faded handwriting on top in blue ink. "Keep safe for her." I felt my heart skip. With shaking hands I opened the lid. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. All addressed in my mother's handwriting. Most were sealed, some were not. Tucked beneath them was a cloth-wrapped bundle, her old guest book, the one she used to keep on her dresser when I was a child. I hadn't seen it since she passed. And under that, at the very bottom, was a manila envelope. It was stiff and I knew immediately it was something official. I pulled it out and saw my full name handwritten on the front in my mother's gentle script. I didn't breathe as I opened it. Inside was a deed. For this house. Dated back nearly 30 years. Transferred ownership. From Ruth M. Caldwell, my mother, to me. My fingers trembled as I read the note clipped to it. "If she ever comes looking, let her find herself here. This house was my beginning and maybe it can be hers too. Fix it up. Make it strong again. Just like you always made me feel." I couldn't stop the tears. I clutched that paper to my chest and let out a sound I didn't even recognize as my own. The walls around me, once so empty and cracked, suddenly felt like they were holding something sacred. Memories I hadn't let myself think about in years started to flood back. I remembered holding Mom's hand in the hospital when she could barely speak and her whispering, "There's something waiting for you. Somewhere small but full of heart." I remembered once when I was 10 we drove through this tiny town. Mom had pulled the car over, stared at a little house by the road, and smiled with a softness I didn't understand then. "This place," she had said, "is where I learned to dream." I didn't realize that house, that moment, had stayed with her until the end. And now it was mine. This wasn't just a junk house. It was her childhood home. The place where she grew up, where she scribbled dreams into the margins of her school books, where she learned to fight through life's storms with quiet strength. And she had left it for me. Hidden it away. Maybe because she knew how the rest of the family operated. Maybe because she didn't want them claiming it, mocking it, stripping it of what it meant. She knew they never would have understood. I sat there for hours reading her letters one by one. Some were about the house, its creaking pipes, the wild sunflowers that used to grow by the back fence, the tree she once carved her name into. But most of them were about me. She wrote about watching me grow, about her fears of leaving me too soon, and how she wanted me to have something of hers that couldn't be taken away. Something no one could control, twist, or demand. It felt like she was right there beside me, guiding me with every word. Her presence filled the room in a way no voice message, no birthday text, ever could. They thought I wasted my money. They thought I bought some broken shack out of spite. But they didn't know the truth. This house. This house was the one place on earth where I was truly wanted. Not because of what I could give. Not because I played the role they needed. But because I was me. And Mom had known all along, I'd find my way back to it. The first few weeks were the hardest. The house was in worse shape than I could have imagined. Cracked floors, holes in the ceiling, peeling wallpaper, and an overpowering smell of mildew that clung to the air. But every inch of it had history. My mother's history. And now it was my turn to breathe new life into it. I didn't have the money to hire professionals, so I turned to what I knew best. I watched video after video on how to fix everything from installing new drywall to restoring old furniture. It was slow. The nights were long, but there was something peaceful about working with my hands. There was something grounding about the physical effort, the sweat, the dust that covered me from head to toe. In those moments, I didn't think about the family who had abandoned me. I didn't think about the betrayal. I started small. The first project was the kitchen. It was a mess of broken cabinets and chipped tiles, but I didn't care. I worked late into the night, using my phone's flashlight to see, repainting everything in soft colors I remembered from my childhood. A pale green for the cabinets, white for the trim. When I couldn't afford new materials, I made do. Old furniture I found in the attic was stripped down, repainted, and sold. I sold whatever I could spare. Vintage chairs, worn-down tables, to get enough money to buy supplies for the next project. The neighbors started to notice. At first they were curious, eyeing me with cautious glances, wondering who this stranger was working alone. But one evening an older man knocked on my door. His name was Mr. Finn. He was the one who lived across the street. "I noticed you've been fixing up that place," he said, grinning. "Got a lot of potential." Over time more of the neighbors came by. They brought me tools, spare wood, old paint. Some of them even offered advice or helped with the heavy lifting. There was an unspoken understanding between us. They knew what I was doing, why I was doing it. And slowly I felt like I was part of something bigger. Like this little town was my refuge. A place where I could leave the past behind and build something on my own terms. The house was changing. Piece by piece. Room by room. What had once been a broken, abandoned shell was starting to shine. I brought my mother's old guest book into the living room and placed it on a new coffee table I'd made myself. I found some old family photos in a box, pictures of my mother when she was young, and I framed them. I hung them on the walls like little pieces of her still alive in this place. It wasn't just the house that was transforming. It was me. The more I worked, the more I found myself. I started taking pride in the small things. The way the sunlight would hit the kitchen in the morning, casting a soft glow over the fresh coat of paint. The way the garden was beginning to take shape. Roses, sunflowers, and lavender blooming in the front yard. There was something so healing about planting these flowers, watching them grow while the past, the hurt, slowly faded behind me. I didn't need my family's approval anymore. I didn't need them to understand my choices. They had kicked me out, shamed me, and tried to control my life. But the house, my mother's house, was mine to shape. And that's exactly what I was doing. The house became more than just a place to live. It became my sanctuary. Every room, every piece of furniture, every detail was a reflection of who I was becoming. And for the first time in a long while I was happy. I had no idea what my family was doing. They hadn't reached out, not once, since I was cast out of the group. And I didn't care. Not anymore. They could call me a failure, mock my decisions, and continue living their perfect little lives. But here in this house I was building something real. Something that couldn't be destroyed by their judgment. The silence between us was a form of revenge in itself. My success, my growth, my peace. They didn't know it yet, but it was already too late for them to take it away. Months passed. I had long since stopped checking my phone for messages from them. The silence was a relief, though it came with a heavy weight in my chest. The house, my refuge, became my entire world, and in many ways I forgot about them. But the world has a way of catching up with you, and soon enough, my family found a way to make their presence known again. Started with a phone call I never expected. My brother. The same one who demanded money for a luxury retreat. The same one who'd called me irresponsible and selfish, was on the other end of the line. His voice sounded different, unsure. "Hey, it's me. I just wanted to check in." I didn't speak for a moment, the sudden intrusion catching me off guard. "Check in? After months of silence? You're just calling to check in?" I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. His voice dropped, almost apologetic. Listen, things have changed. The retreat. It failed. I'm in a lot of debt now. But I thought maybe you could help. I wanted to hang up right then and there, to tell him how badly he'd misjudged me, how foolish he'd been. But I didn't. Said I took a breath. I can't help you, brother's name. I'm not the person you come to when everything falls apart. I paused, staring at the walls of the house I had turned into something beautiful, something entirely mine. I don't think you understand how far I've come since you all shut me out. Before he could say anything else, I ended the call. But that wasn't the end of it. A few days later, the next phone call came. This time it was my sister. I had a feeling it wouldn't be a casual check-in. Her voice was fragile, shaky, as though she hadn't quite found her footing. Hey, I'm going through something and I don't know who else to turn to. I could hear the desperation in her voice, the cracks in her perfect, curated life. What's going on? My marriage, she said, her voice faltering. It's falling apart. He's changed and I don't know what happened. I feel lost. For a moment I was stunned. My sister, who'd always had everything, the husband, the perfect life, the status, was asking me for help? The same person who'd kicked me out, shamed me, made me feel like I was less than nothing? I'm sorry to hear that, I said, keeping my tone even. But I can't fix what's broken in your marriage. Maybe you should look inward for a change. Before she could respond, I hung up. But even that didn't mark the end of the situation. It wasn't long before my father called, or rather demanded I call him back. I had been ignoring his attempts to reach out for weeks, but this time something about his message caught my attention. We need to talk, he had said, his voice carrying a hint of urgency. When I finally answered, he wasted no time. I'm in trouble, your name. I've been struggling to pay bills. I need your help. I could hear the desperation in his voice, a tone I'd never heard before. He'd always been the one in control, the one who made me feel insignificant. Yet now here he was asking for help from the very person he had humiliated. I told you I'd never be the disappointment, but now it's me, he continued, his voice cracking. I didn't realize how much I needed you until everything started falling apart. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I sat with the weight of his words. It wasn't the apology I wanted, but it was a start. Then came the real kicker. I heard about the house, he added. It's worth more than I thought, isn't it? I saw it in the local paper. People are talking about it. That's when I realized they had no idea what I'd been doing. They had no idea what the house had become. They didn't know about the hard work, the sweat, the tears. They didn't understand the value I'd put into it, how much it had meant for me to build something from the wreckage of my past. But now, seeing its transformation, they were starting to realize just how wrong they had been. They want to feature it in a story, Dad continued, almost breathless. It's worth over $140,000 now, isn't it? I could almost feel him salivating, imagining the money, the status he could gain from it. The transformation of the house was no longer just about me. It was about them, about their need to benefit from my success. A knock on my door interrupted my thoughts. When I opened it, standing on the threshold were my brother, my sister, and my father. They looked like they'd come from a disaster. My brother's face was pinched with stress. My sister's eyes were red from crying, and my father stood there, awkwardly holding a bouquet of flowers, like a man trying to make amends for everything he'd said. We wanted to come and apologize, my father started, clearly uncomfortable. We realize now that we've been hard on you. We were wrong. It wasn't enough. Not yet. But the fact that they had come to my door looking for reconciliation made my heart beat a little faster. It was time for me to make my decision. I stood there, feeling the weight of their gazes. They had come crawling back. They needed something from me now. But the truth was, I didn't need them. Not anymore. I let the silence stretch between us before I spoke. You're right about one thing, I said, my voice steady, but carrying a weight they couldn't ignore. You were wrong. But now I'm going to make sure that you never forget what you lost. They stood there, eyes wide, faces painted with a mixture of hope and desperation, as though they thought I'd somehow turn into the person they used to know. The one who'd bend, the one who'd cave. But I wasn't that person anymore. I wasn't the one they could guilt-trip into submission. Not after everything they'd put me through. My brother spoke first, his voice shaky. We've fallen on hard times. We're asking you to sell the house. You can't keep it to yourself. It's worth too much. It could save us. We need your help, please. My sister nodded, but there was no shame in her eyes, only entitlement. You've got all this money now. It's the least you can do. My father, silent until now, stepped forward. We're family. This should be mine too. All you've got to do is sign over the deed. I didn't move. The room felt thick with the tension of unspoken truths, and I was the only one who had the courage to speak them. Slowly I reached into my pocket and pulled out a photo. It was an old one taken the day they kicked me out. It was of me standing outside the very house they thought was a mistake, with nothing but a suitcase and my heart broken in two. The house, once abandoned and ignored, had become my sanctuary. I handed it to my father, who looked at the image, unsure of what it meant. This house was built from your rejection, I said quietly, my words deliberate, calm. I wasn't building it for you. I didn't rebuild it for your approval. And no, you can't have a piece of it now. The words hung in the air, thick and final. I let that sink in for a moment before I added, you didn't know, but this house was my mother's. She left it to me. She trusted me to care for it, and only me. There was the truth they didn't know. My mother had known all along, even before her passing, that I was the one who would protect the legacy she left behind. That's why she left it to me and not them. She knew they'd never understand what it meant. They were speechless. All of them. My brother and sister just stared, their faces frozen with disbelief. My father was fumbling with the photo in his hands, unsure of how to respond. Without saying another word, I turned and walked away. There was nothing left to say. Nothing left to give them. The door closed behind me, and as I walked away from them, I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. They were standing there, stunned, realizing that all their manipulation, all their demands meant nothing now. They had lost me. And I was free. Sometimes the greatest gifts come in the ugliest packages. And the worst betrayals show you exactly where you belong. Away from people who never saw your worth. It took losing everything I thought mattered to realize that I had everything I ever needed. Myself. That old junk house, once a symbol of rejection, became my strength. My mother's legacy wasn't in the house. It was in me. And now I'm building my own future, brick by brick, free from the weight of their expectations. I'll never let anyone make me feel small again.